to highlight the international aspect of trafficking. I mean, we all know that it's a crime, an abhorrent crime, a vile crime, which knows no boundaries, but it's not often that we have the opportunity to look at that, to examine how we can deal with it as a cross-border crime and how we can take the action forward. And that is in fact the aim of today. We are also putting pressure on the UK government to ratify the Council of Europe Convention on Trafficking of Women and Children.
And in the north of England, myself and some colleagues set up a re-education programme for men who turf crawl. Okay? I'm here to tell you, don't waste any of your money on trying to re-educate men who are already prolific users of women in prostitution. Introduce a law and then educate them. Okay? Because what we found was that the men who came through our course were more concerned with the fact that house prices in the areas where they turf crawl fall than they were hearing from a woman whose daughter had been pimped and murdered in prostitution.
Because I share the view of the UN Special Rapporteur on this subject, that for the most part, prostitution as it is actually practiced in the world usually does satisfy the elements of trafficking. We know from Home Office research the proportion of women who enter prostitution who start at under 18 is possibly 3 out of 4 prostitutes. So children are being groomed into prostitution by pimps who trick and exploit them. 80% of prostituted women in most surveys are addicted to Class A drugs. 80% of women in prostitution had experienced violence. The United States State Department research shows that 89%, that's 9 out of 10, of people in prostitution want to escape it. There are those who would argue that the answer to this, and the way to keep women healthy, to protect them from STIs and so on, is to legalise prostitution, and then there won't be this massive criminal market. And it's a tempting view. It's the view which the Royal College of Nursing, for example, takes because they're concerned with the health of the women. But it's a wrong view. And it's wrong because in practice an extraordinary thing happens. No country has successfully regulated this market in a way which prevents an equivalent criminal market beside it.
Or we can license women as sex workers, which has been done in countries and where we know the experience is atrocious for the women and atrocious for the society, because if you say that women are purchasable and that it is absolutely acceptable that they should be purchased by men, then you have also normalized the idea that all women are objects.
Women in prostitution have 40 times the risk of death of other women of their age.
Human trafficking is one of the vilest harms that threaten our society. It's a modern-day form of slavery, an evil practice perpetrated for profit, with no regard for the consequences for the victims or indeed society as a whole. The government is totally committed to tackling this abhorrent crime. However, our measures will be futile if we do not tackle the demand for sexually exploited women and children. Otherwise, in reality, once we have closed one trafficking network, another may move in and take its place. So what are we going to do about it? We recognise that there is considerable support for more to be done to tackle the demand for prostitution, which impacts on the demand for trafficking for sexual exploitation. On the 10th of January, just a week or so ago, I led a ministerial visit to Sweden as part of this review. I was accompanied by the Solicitor General, Vera Baird, and the Deputy Minister for Women and Equality, Barbara Follett. The purpose of the trip was to examine the effect of the introduction of new legislation in 1999 in Sweden, which criminalised the purchase or attempted purchase of sex and decriminalised its sale, aiming to cut demand and so reduce levels of trafficking and prostitution.
Because something has been around for a very long time does not mean that you have to put up with it like the weather. And there's some very disingenuous articles and speeches made by the pro-prostitution lobby, giving the impression that this is a lifestyle choice for most women. Well, I could have been a hairdresser, I could have been a brain surgeon, I could have been an astronaut, but you know what? I'm going to be a prostitute. And I want to make it very clear that Ken Livingstone, the Mayor of London, in the submission that we put into the government consultation, paying the price, we are very, very clear about London. We are not going down the route of normalising prostitution. We do not believe it is a victimless crime.
Trafficking in human beings is a market. As on any other market, we have to take into consideration both supply and demand. It is a survivor of slavery more than 2 centuries after the abolitionist movement started right here in London.
Illegal entry into our country via an organised network comes at a price from those who are being trafficked. Often women and children are asked to put up many thousands of pounds to actually come here, and they are forced into bonded labour, otherwise known as slavery.
But if you continue, if we do not address the question of gender relations, the question of how women are presented in the media and also on the social and political level, we can never succeed really in fighting the question of trafficking and violence against women.
We've got to put votes into this issue. We have got to get all the women in this country to stand alongside us in solidarity with the women and children who are being trafficked